hello, thank you for having us here.
Hello, and thank you for our conversation, because it's important for us to share real figures about public moods of Ukrainians.
Okay, let's go real, let's go to the data. We've heard from high sources that President Zelensky might have a popularity rating of only 4%. What is the reality?
The only source of 4% should be and could be only Russian sources, because actually after the full-scale invasion, his support surged, and actually right after the full-scale invasion, it reached even like 90%. Then it decreased, and actually it was normal. It's like regression to the mean, because to have 90% in democratic society is almost impossible. But right now, in February 2025, his support level, trust level, is 57% of Ukrainians trust him. So he still has quite high support for the democratic society. He is perceived like a legitimate head of the state, and people are actually shocked with this 4% issue.
But this is like people showing support to the president. What about voting intentions? Do you have that measured also?
I could say that after full-scale invasion, it's some kind of a sensitive question for Ukrainians to publish political ratings, and typically we ask such questions, but we do not publish it, because first of all, we don't know which public figures will participate in the election. Secondly, it typically could be used to create some disunity inside society. But I could tell you that if only classic politicians without any new faces will participate in elections, like Zelensky, Poroshenko, Tymoshenko, it's our former president and prime minister, Razumkov, etc.
Or maybe the general who is now...
It's a separate question, but if you're talking about politicians right now, Zelensky still received the highest support, at least around 25-30% out of adult population, and he quite easily wins in the first or in the second round of elections. Mainly in the second round of elections against Petro Poroshenko if he participates again. So he is still the most favorable politician. But yes, you're right. We have other trustworthy public figures like previous Commander-in-Chief Volodymyr Zaluzhnyi, who is now ambassador in the United Kingdom. It's important to stress he never expressed political ambitions. And actually, it's mainly our oppositional politicians or public activists are trying to use Volodymyr Zaluzhnyi, like to destroy Zelensky support, and and try to become a part of the Zaluzhnyi team. For this moment, Zaluzhnyi has higher trust level than Zelensky. 80% of Ukrainians trust him. If Zaluzhnyi participates in the elections, he even could win these elections with such a high trust level. But actually, Zelensky still receives high support even with Zaluzhnyi on the list. So we cannot say like he's like a 4% support or like almost 0% support, as it was told by some officials.
Absolutely. And even so, in any scenario, General Zaluzhnyi would be like a pro-European, pro-Atlantic alternative, because I've seen him declaring, like yesterday or day before that, that elections are not important now. What's important now is defending Ukraine. So
you're right, because and that is why we do not want to publish public ratings, because yes, we could publish and show like that Zaluzhnyi is the head of Zelensky, but again, it's not electoral process right now. Everything could change every minute, especially if a person becomes a politician. People perceive him as a politician, not just some public figure. So he's responsible, and he understands that elections right now will could ruin unity inside the society, and we should postpone it for future.
And beyond that, it's illegal. We are under, your country is under martial law. The Constitution says you cannot organize elections under martial law. This is my understanding.
There are several problems, and actually even this constitutional problems is even the least one, because I could describe you several problems. We are a large-scale society and state. First of all, how could we conduct elections in the frontline communities that are shelled every day? Even Kyiv is shelled every day, and actually you open polling precincts, and it could be attacked by shaheds, by missiles, etc. So lots of people will refuse participating in elections because of safety. Again, lots of people will say, why should we spend hundreds of millions of hryvnias to finance elections when we need to finance defense forces? How should we make our people abroad to participate in the elections and vote in the elections. How we make our military participate as candidates or as voters in the elections. So there are lots of problems, and actually the majority of Ukrainians against online voting because they're afraid of frauds. And let's imagine, because my guess is that Russia wants election in Ukraine just to create chaos in Ukraine. Because, for example, we have turnout 25%. It's possible if some Kyiv residents, Western Ukraine residents will vote. Russia would say it's just 25% turnout rate, you elected illegitimate authorities. So, and actually there are no pro-Russian candidates that could win an election. What is more, we have a parliament. It's quite strong parliament. If we conduct parliamentary elections, we'll receive from 5 to 10 different factions, and perhaps there will be some small pro-Russian faction, but it will not affect anything. So it's impossible to elect pro-Russian authorities.
That was another question. Is there any pro-Russian faction in the political area in Ukraine?
Even among Ukrainians, we still have from 5 to 10% on the government-controlled areas people who share or have some warm views towards Russia or even try to justify Russia. And actually it's normal. We are democratic. It's not normal, but we are a democratic society. And if in our surveys people are free to express openly pro-Russian narratives, it means people are sincere answering. And actually it's showing, if I saw you figures 100% hate Russia, you could say, no, it can't be, because you also know in Romania it's the same. But we will not have no pro-Russian, openly pro-Russian politicians, surely, because Russia attacked Ukraine and lots of people were killed and injured because of invasion. But we could have some Eurosceptic parties and factions. We are supporting joining the European Union, but we should defend our traditional values. Or we should build some strong economic ties with Europe and with Russia at the same. But even these parties will receive only marginal support in Ukraine because people, first of all, want Ukraine to become part of European Union, of NATO, to receive some security guarantees, and they will vote for these parties and these leaders.
Yeah, I saw that actually in the street when I was, in the Maidan Square, for instance, yesterday, and I was trying. It's true, it's a bit hard. People are not really speaking English, the majority of them. But I tried to ask them what was their opinion about all these peace talks and all these words that are flowing around, and people seem to be confused. That was the attitude. They did not understand why this wording from Washington. And
you're totally right. When we ask a list of problems for Ukraine right now, people say yes. First of all, it's war, and to continue resistance or to achieve some good peace for Ukraine. It's security guarantees, first of all. Secondly, some socio-economic or anti-corruption activities. As for the democracy, yes, 95% of Ukrainians want Ukraine to be fully functioning democracy. Out of criterions of democracy, free and fair elections in our service are top 3 criterions for Ukraine. So we love elections. We know we need elections. I would say even more. More than 70% of Ukrainians, perhaps even more than 80% for this moment, want to reload our government, our parliament, but they say only after war ends. Because for us it's not a problem. We have a president, yes, we could criticize him, we could criticize the government, the parliament, but for this moment it's not our main problem. They are legitimate authorities and we will vote for some other people, parties, but only after war ends. So it's really people are confused, because if it's not a problem for us, if it's violates our constitution, why should we conduct elections right now?
Yeah, true. And what would you do in regions like the Donbass, Crimea? What are the borders of Ukraine?
Yes, it's...
How would you... Because the legal borders of Ukraine are not the de facto borders right now. You have occupied territories. There's something else. And legally, if you start elections, you should organize elections in those areas too, because legally they are part of Ukraine, right?
Actually, you shedding light one of the critical points. We could put aside Crimea case or Luhansk Oblast case that is totally occupied by Russian forces. But what about the city of Kherson and city of Zaporizhia? It's Ukrainian-controlled territories. Zaporizhia never was occupied by Russian forces, but Russians claim it's our territory. So from the point of view of Russians, we are occupying their territory. So Russia will not accept any this agreement saying these territories should be ceded to Ukraine without proper pressure on Russia. And actually what we see, Russia is is quite a big state. Yes, they have lots of people. They could kill thousands of its own citizens. They could stop paying pensions just to finance your military. But it's a big state. If much smaller Ukraine was able to stop Russian forces in the Donbas region, and it's interesting that last year lots of media said Russians conquered 4,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. Oh my God, oh my God. But it's only less than 1% of Ukrainian territory for the whole year. And Russians lost hundreds of thousands of people in these battles. There are lots of tanks, lots of other vehicles. So their advancement was very limited, actually, given all the resources spent. So that is why Ukrainians are frustrated. Over the 80% of Ukrainians believe we could achieve some success in this war if we are properly supported by the Western allies, not just the words, but enough F-16s, enough Patriots, etc. But we see that not all the European and especially North American allies are ready to support Ukraine. That is why we should be pragmatic. And actually, people could even accept elections, but only if you receive some security guarantees. Because the key question, how would you guarantee security? Yes, if you have European and American forces on the Ukrainian soil and we feel secure, let us conduct elections then. But if you don't have these forces, if you don't have NATO membership, if you don't have something like nuclear weapons, more than 70% of Ukrainians right now are supporting restoring nuclear weapons for Ukraine.
How much?
More than 70%. And even 45% say even if it means we lose support from the Western allies, we should try to restore nuclear weapons for Ukraine. And actually 30 years ago, when Ukraine gave up on weapons, only 30% were disappointed with this. So the majority were either supporting giving up on the weapons or undecided because we are a peaceful state, we are surrounded by good neighbors, why should we...
Yeah, but people saw that there were some countries that were backing this decision and giving guarantees.
Yes,
and one of these countries was Russia.
Yes, and people saw...
Look what they're doing now.
What is more, even before 2022, in February 2022, 34% of Ukrainians had favorable view of Russia. And actually more than 80% had favorable view of ordinary Russians. People mainly blamed Kremlin, but not ordinary Russians, saying they are our brothers, our close neighbors. It's just Putin. So he dies someday and they will be better. Right now we have 90% hatred level to both Russia and Russians. But 30 years ago, Russians were perceived as a brotherhood nation. And people believe why do we need nuclear weapons? We have US, we have UK, we have Russia as our guarantors. And now people feel betrayed. What is more, and I should remind all our European listeners and readers about Minsk agreement in 2015, because Ukraine de facto accepted loss of Crimea and parts of Donbas in exchange for zero security guarantees. So it was a ceasefire. It's exactly what Russia wants from Ukraine right now. Right. And what we received. In 7 years, Russia attacked with a full-scale invasion. And we didn't have enough weapons, but we still we should remind that in March and April 2022, we haven't received enough weapons from the West. So actually Kyiv was protected and liberated with all Ukrainian own volunteers forces. And actually we show our will to resist, and still now Ukrainians say yes, it's very hard, but there are no other ways to continue resistance.
Yeah, and talking about these guarantees, because that's where our discussion started, it's the same thing with the mineral deal, right?
Yes.
The minerals deal that the US is proposing, which started, it's true, from a proposal that came from President Zelensky, yes, and was put into the victory plan that he presented to the allies.
Zelensky actually was right, because it was some to show actually when we were asked what could Ukraine sell to the West in exchange for support. First of all, actually it's an idea that democracy could be fought for in freedom, and Ukrainians showed that even in the 21st century, thousands of people who could spare their lives for their country, for their people, for their families. It's again to inspire again our Western European and North American civilization. But right now Zelensky proposed, and actually it was a good deal. You could receive access to our natural resources. You could also receive lots of benefits from it. And actually the majority of Ukrainians accepted it. So they said it's a good idea, but in exchange either for weapons or for some security guarantees. When this first draft of natural resources included zero security guarantees and zero weapons, surely Ukrainians would accept in accepting refusal of this thing. Why should we give access to our resources without anything in exchange? So we should give access to our European allies, because we are receiving lots of weapons from Europe too, and we are receiving even political support. So first of all, Ukrainians are ready to exchange natural resources for the support, but for something like palpable.
Yeah, give us some security.
Yes.
We are at war. What about the attitude towards Romania and the Romanians? What is the situation right now from a sociological point of view?
Actually, also people are not very well informed about Romania, unfortunately, and its support. But those people who are informed, they understand that out of almost all our neighbors, Romania is, I think, the best neighbor. And actually, some political experts who are commenting that say that perhaps we are receiving the best support from Romania. Yes, Poland is our logistic support, but all this blocking of borders, of not providing some weapons or some other problems, but Romania provided weapons, political support, and really was a good ally. So actually this war showed who are better neighbor for Ukraine, and actually Romania is a good neighbor of Ukraine.
Do you have some data about what the Ukrainians think, the public?
In previous years, I saw surveys, not this year, but previous years, about attitudes to different states, and I think the as I remember, absolute majority of Ukrainians, like 70 to 80%, have either favorable view of Romania, especially if they are prompted with some information about provided weapon support, etc. People really, those who are informed, they feel they have favorable view. But let's be honest, over the last month, people are afraid of the last elections in Romania, and when people start associating Romania with Georgescu and some other guys' statements, it's like lots of not very favorable feelings. So people are afraid that with new head of state, we hope the new head of state will be supporting Ukraine. But if he says something bad against Ukraine, surely it would affect the attitude towards Romania. Because in Poland, actually, it's like an example. For many years, we study what is called social distance to different ethnic groups. For many years, Russians were on the second place after Ukrainians. 2 years ago, for the first time, on the second place came Polish people. But right in the month of this survey, Polish farmers started blocking the border of Ukraine, and actually the attitude towards the Polish people deteriorated a lot. So for some time, Polish people were seen as our close allies, but government's activities and farmers' activities, it's not ruined, but affected seriously our communication. So that is why we hope that with Romania we'll maintain all these good relations, and actually we are happy to provide this shield to Romania and also to protect from Shaheds and other missiles who are coming across Ukrainian territory.
Mr. Grushetsky, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you too.